Okay, so Ms. Blackman here. Let's discuss Sputnik and the impact that Sputnik had on the US and technological innovations and education that resulted because of the launch of Sputnik. So, this is all about the space race between the United States and the USSR during the Cold War. So, this is Standard 20 and Part C. Okay, so the space race. So 1957, Soviets launched Sputnik. This was the world's first artificial satellite. And this was a huge deal because the USSR had essentially beat the Americans to space. They got there first. And this is also a big deal because we're in a Cold War with the USSR. And so Americans now thought it might be possible for the Soviets to launch missiles and blow us up from space. So Eisenhower was president during the launch of Sputnik. And so this is how he responds. He responds with creating the National Defense Education Act. This provided federal funding for education, particularly in the areas of math and science, which is why, in part, math and science are still emphasized in education today because of USSR beating us to the space race. And Eisenhower, they expected him to go ahead and launch something, but he said, you know what, I'd like to know what's on the other side of the moon, but I won't pay to find out this year. Eisenhower's more concerned with the budget for the United States. And that was important because if you overrun the budget, then you have severe problems, which is what USSR ended up in the first place getting in trouble and how the Cold War ended because they ran out of funds. So, with public anxiety still mounting over Sputnik, Eisenhower also approved the creation of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA. So, if you ever wondered what NASA's real name is, it's National Aeronautics and Space Administration. And this was created in 1958. All right, so what were the impacts of Sputnik on the U.S.? Number one, a dramatic increase in funding for science and math education. Two, creation of NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration. And three, it inspired engineers and scientists to develop new technologies. And this led to the eventual development of the internet, all because of Sputnik and the space race. And it also contributed to the perception of the missile gap between the US and the USSR, the fear that Soviets could use sudden perceived superiority in missile technology to launch an attack on the US and its allies. And so you have the US, also this space race escalating the nuclear race, nuclear weapons race between the US and the USSR as well. So Eisenhower devised policies to counter this perceived Soviet military threat. His domino theory led to the Americans getting involved in Vietnam War. And then also he threatened a massive retaliation, meaning if the USSR was to attack the US would answer any military attack with an all-out military and atomic capacity. So this meant that the US was building up weapons and they were ready to use them. They would go to the brink of war if possible to prevent a counterattack. So meaning that we would build up all of our military arsenal to show that if the USSR did attack us, then the whole world would blow up basically and end because we would use all of our atomic weapons. So, yeah, and it worked, right? Because nobody used them.